welcome. If this is your first time for the SIG, welcome to the SIG. For those of you returning, welcome back, and thank you for joining us in today's conversation. I just have a quick little small few announcements, not too long, just so we respect our speaker's time. So let me show this. Y'all can see my screen. So welcome again. The online entrepreneurship education interest group is to provide a forum related to online entrepreneurship education. So again, welcome, and hopefully you all are registered with our SIG. Just a quick, make sure you register for the USASB conference, which is being hosted January 5th through the 8th. So please don't forget to register for that. Our next meeting is Wednesday, November 4th. We will still working details to have Dr. James Spee from the University of the Redlands School of Business to talk about micro-credentials for entrepreneurship education. So you'll see a message on that for this upcoming event. So make sure you come out and join us for it. So today we have the honor of hearing from our guest speaker, Dr. Scott Andrews. And Dr. Scott Andrews, you can correct me about the saying of the University of Worcester. Is that
Worcester?
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. And of course, he's also been with the Case Center since 1996. And today he will talk about successful case teaching online and in person. So I will give Dr. Scott Andrews the floor, and you can take it away. Again, thank you for being with us today.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Thank you for your welcome, Jay, and thank you for inviting me, in one sense, on behalf of the Case Center, to be here and to share this time with you. I'm just going to move a few things around on the screen so I can see everything. I hope you can see me okay, and I hope you can see the slides that I'm just about to start to put onto the screen. So I am Scott Andrews. I'm based in the middle of England at a university called the University of Worcester. I had the privilege of going to a conference some time ago in Oklahoma with colleagues from the Case Center, and somebody looked at my badge, and one of the delegates over breakfast, and he was trying, a bit like Jay, to pronounce the name of my university, and he was going Worcester, Worcester, and I said it's Worcester. And this guy looked at me kind of frustrated and said that doesn't spell Worcester. And we got to the end of the breakfast aisle, and we got our drinks and our food and everything on our trays. And right at the end was the condiments, the sauces. And there, next to the ketchup, was Worcestershire sauce. And I pointed to it and I said, that's where I come from, Worcestershire sauce country. And apparently everybody's heard of Worcestershire sauce. So if you don't know where Worcester is, it's just south of Birmingham, and we're famous for nothing apart from Worcestershire sauce. And we have a university there. I'm one of the heads of department from one of the three departments in the business school. And I'm an avid supporter and user of the CASE method. Online, face-to-face, case teaching, case writing. I've been using the CASE method for over 25 years now. And indeed, in about 94, 95, I met with some friends at the Case Center, or ECCH as it was called at the time. And I was invited to participate in a workshop over 3 days, looking at how to write case studies. And about a year and a half after that, I was asked if I'd like to get involved in training others in using the CASE method. I foolishly didn't duck quickly enough. And I've been involved with the Case Center, and I've traveled the world with them, sometimes remotely like we are today, and sometimes face-to-face, delivering workshops and programs and webinars, all sorts of different events to explore how we use the case most effectively for teaching and learning. But I will say that I'm not a believer that the case study is an answer to all of our learning challenges. I believe it's just one tool that we bring into the toolkit, as it were, into the classroom in management education and in entrepreneurship education as well. So I'm not here to say this is the answer to all of those challenges, but I would say that it's one very useful tool that we use frequently in our business school, and perhaps more importantly, that I've seen being used around the world. Now, most of you will know from the part of the world that you hail from that the case method has evolved originally from Harvard. It's just over 100 years old, and we're very mindful of that pedigree and that history. But part of what I want to share today is not just a reflection of how Harvard used the case method, although they do use it incredibly effectively, but to really try and draw insights from how I've seen the case method used and deployed literally around the world. So I've been to more than 40 different countries looking at how to develop case method programs, whether online or face-to-face. We deliver our own online case programs on a weekly basis from where I'm based, where we deliver synchronous learning, online learning, and also we deliver a lot of asynchronous programs as well. We have partnerships with organizations around the world, including particularly in China, and we're running a number of asynchronous case method programs with student groups in China as well. So I'm hoping to try and bring together in the time that we've got just some insights, not just from any one place or any one single approach, but just approaches that I've captured from all sorts of different places. And you'll see from the slides that I share, wherever possible, I've tried to identify which country this thinking has originated from, just to kind of bring you a global picture of how people are accessing or working with the case method and adapting the case method for use in all sorts of different ways at the moment. In particular, for a moment, just thinking about entrepreneurship education, and just to put my own kind of credentials out there, one of the many areas of development over the last few years that I've been involved with, we had a successful bid to the European Union for funding to take the case method out to Turkey and to explore at length how the case method could be developed further as a learning tool in Turkish entrepreneurship education. So we were working with entrepreneurs for about 3 or 4 years over in Turkey, looking at how they were sharing their stories and how we could capture their stories in a case method format to help others to learn in entrepreneurship education. So that's one area of many that I've been involved with in recent times. I probably took about 15 trips out to Turkey when we were allowed to travel to Turkey to go and run those sorts of programs, just to give you a bit of a backstory there. So that's a little bit about me. We've got the Zoom group chat that I can see just next to me as well. So please do feel free to introduce yourself if you want to on that Zoom chat. And I've just put a question in there, which hopefully will kind of prompt some thoughts for you, because we believe in the case method is very much a participant-centered learning approach. So as much as I'd like to, in the short time we've got, I'd love to get a little bit of engagement from those of you who are in the room. So do feel free to introduce yourself. And my question really is, what do you see as the potential kind of challenges that you face, or that you might face when delivering cases online? Because that's really at the heart of what this time is all about. It may be that some of you have never delivered cases online before, and that's fine. Just say hi, let me know who you are, and say I don't use cases at the moment, and that's absolutely fine as well. But if you're a case user, maybe there's some experiences that you've already had working with the case method online that have been real challenges for you. And if you've got something you want to throw out there into the group chat, I'll keep an eye on that. And I've got a colleague here, Trisha Haskell from the Case Centre. She'll keep an eye on that as well. And between us, we should be able to share insights and responses to your questions. Just very, very quickly about the Case Centre. If you want more information about that, like I said, my colleague Trisha is in the room right now, and she hails from the US office of the Case Centre. There's a UK and a US office. And the Case Centre, just to put things in perspective, holds the world's largest collection of management case studies in entrepreneurship education and in all the management disciplines. There are literally tens of thousands of case studies available at your fingertips through the Case Centre. Those include all of the major collections from the Ivy League schools, from Harvard, from over into INSEAD and IMD in Europe, and the major collections there, across into India, ICFE, and into Indonesia, and further over into Australia. The world's largest collection, or collection of collections, of case studies are all based there at the Case Centre, and you can view those, you can adopt those if you want to, and you can look at how different cases have been adapted for delivery. So there's a whole heap of resources there, and as well as being, as it were, like a holding center for case collections, the Case Centre also has a number of articles that are freely available for folk like yourselves as educators, and you'll be able to discover more of what perhaps some case experts have written in that whole genre of teaching cases, and particularly delivering cases online. There's a massive repository of web links to articles and webinars and all sorts of content about how to deliver cases online. So I'll be passing those links on to you a little bit later on in the slides as well. So thanks for those of you that are already starting to put some content in there. I can see that we've already got a problem between the US and the UK way of writing center, but that we can live with that one. How to substitute the whiteboard you'd normally use in face-to-face class to capture discussion points, and that's a really interesting challenge, isn't it? We use whiteboards a lot, both face-to-face and online. I was running a program with a group of master's students yesterday. We used something called Blackboard Collaborate as our online platform, and in that online platform we're able to use breakout groups as well, and not only can I introduce a whiteboard that I and other students can access, which is incredibly valuable when delivering online, but also when I put the students into breakout groups, they can set up their own whiteboards, and they can collaborate together then on their own whiteboards. Different platforms are going to offer different levels of functionality there, of course, but I found that incredibly helpful, particularly when working with an international group of students where some are just not so confident about speaking out loud. And in actual fact, the online route, if you like, to inquiry and learning has been really, really valuable for, let's say, many of our Chinese students. If we put them in a class face-to-face, it's really hard to squeeze 2 words out of them. But actually, if we give them an online portal and space to add their own content through text chat, they're just away and they're going for it. So it's really interesting to see how using things like whiteboards can be used to capture discussion points. I encourage people to screenshot then all the time, and so that they can then share their screens later when they come back into the main group for a discussion. So any which way that I can encourage engagement, I will try and adopt that when using cases online. So you're quite right. Some people are saying there are challenges when using an iPad. Logging into the system is a little bit more, setting up the second profile maybe might be helpful. The other thing I tend to find is I use a lot of polling. I'm not going to have time to do that today, but we use a lot of other software tools to poll our students. What I tend to do is I always have my mobile phone on hand just here as well, and we tend to use something like Vivox or other types of polling systems as well, just to get our students to use that technology. And so if they're less engaged with the screen, then they might be more engaged with their phones as well. So I'm just kind of running through some of the points that you're raising here, which is really, really helpful. So I'm just going to move away from the group chat for a minute and share a few slides just to get us started. But do keep that group chat going, and do please keep introducing yourself. It's great to have a bit of content there. Thank you. 5 things in the brief amount of time that I have that I'd like to share with you. 5 different considerations, if you like, when thinking about using the case method online. And I am focusing mostly on online. We may want to have a conversation at the end about some aspects of case delivery face-to-face, and I'm really happy to do that. But I'm very mindful that your SIG group is particularly geared towards online learning and online delivery. So that will be the focus of this session. But do feel free to ask any questions about face-to-face as well if you want to. We're currently in a situation of lockdown, probably very much like yourselves, where as a university at present, we're offering blended delivery. So we have some face-to-face and some online taking place in just about all of our programs. But we're very mindful that the UK is very close to another national lockdown. So we're gearing ourselves already for the potential to switch once again, just like we did in March of this year, to full online delivery again. We had an e-learning week as part of our induction for all of our undergraduate students in the business school, where we invited them to engage with case studies and simulation games, and just to kind of get used to the technology and start to build confidence about how to deliver and engage. And it was also a really helpful opportunity by including this as part of the very beginning of their program, the induction week. It kind of sets the contract, if you like, the educational contract that we have with our learners, that says, you know, this is what we expect from you and this is what you can expect from us. So that whole issue of engagement and participation was a real key issue. There was no opportunity for hiding in the shadows. We used every tool possible to try and keep bringing people out of the shadows back into the center of the conversation. So more on that in a few minutes. Let's have a look at these. We're going to start off by just having a quick exploration of what different people around the world are saying right now about the case method and about adapting it for online delivery. We'll look at how we might need to revise our own expectations when delivering online, particularly if you're already used to using cases in face-to-face sessions, as I have been for many, many years. That there is a distinct set of challenges that we have to face in terms of just revising expectations for delivery online. And that's a real challenge for me right now, because I'm delivering programs in parallel. So I'll have one group of students who will receive a face-to-face 3-hour session with me, and another group of students from the same program who will be on the online group, if you like, and they'll be receiving the same session online. So how do I manage content delivery in two very, very different contexts to make sure it's equitable and that there's standardization there? All sorts of challenges that we're having to wrestle with when revising expectations for online delivery. I'll look briefly at thoughts around online case delivery platforms. I'm mindful that we all use different platforms. We're on Zoom right now. I've already mentioned Blackboard Collaborate. We use Microsoft Teams quite a lot as well. So all sorts of different platforms that we're probably using for case delivery. Some of the challenges that come with managing that process. I've already mentioned that we can look at online delivery in two contexts, either in real time, as we are right now, talking to each other, or asynchronous. And I'll look at some of the challenges of working with both and the benefits of integrating both as well as part of an online delivery strategy, if you like, for your modules. And then, whilst to a certain degree, there's a lot of comment about how we're having to sort of redact what we're doing and dumb down and revise expectations because it's all online. There are also some real benefits for delivering online, one or two of which I've already started to allude to with our overseas students. And I want to sort of capitalize on some of those benefits as we wrap things up, as well as look at how we mitigate against some of the challenges that are presented. So that hopefully sets the scene for the areas that I want to have a look at. Incidentally, we will make available to you at the very end of this session, we will make available all of these slides, and I'll be putting them into the group chat so you can download those right at the end as well. So please don't panic about having to kind of copy all this stuff down, because I'll be sharing these slides as a file for you, as a PDF, which I'll put into the group chat at the end as well. So I'm going to go right back in time and be a bit controversial for a moment. This is a quote from Professor Cragg at Harvard University, who effectively says, if we look at this middle line here, that the case method is assumed to be for an adult function and therefore denied to our undergraduate students. In other words, the Harvard mindset was this is for exec education, for postgraduate learners, post-experienced learners. But as I've alluded to just here, Professor Cragg was teaching in 1940. So how we've seen the case method evolve and adapt since then. When I first started running workshops about 25 years ago, there were still some scholars in my room who were saying, why are you talking about undergraduates? We shouldn't be using cases with undergraduates. Again, how the world has changed even in the last 25 years, where nowadays we see as much adoption of cases for undergraduate use as we do for postgraduates and post-experience and exec ed use as well. So we're seeing a real mass adoption of the case method, but a lot of adaptation that's taken place. For example, when I first started running these workshops with the Case Center, I knew that about 25 years ago, the average size of a case study that was available from the Case Center's collection 25 years ago was 28 pages. Today, it's half that size. The average size of the case study today is only 14 pages. Obviously, there's a massive variation from there, but there's been such a lot of adaptation in that time. And one of the questions that you might be thinking as you're looking to adopt the case method for your own classes is, what's an appropriate size of content within the case to be using this for online learning? And that might be something we come back to a little bit later as well. I'm going to move into the UK for a moment, from Imperial College Business School. The essential question when we're thinking about adapting the case for online delivery is what are the needs that need to be developed? High quality presentation, impactful pedagogy are best achieved when working together across multidisciplinary and multi-level teams. My observation has been, I need backup, I need support. Because we're working with different systems all the time. So the IT needs and having the IT resource support behind you is a critical part of developing the online platform, as it were, for you to be developing your programs. So we've had to really up our game at the University of Worcester over the last 12 months as we've switched very, very quickly all of our programs to online and then move back to a blended approach. And as I said, probably in the next 2 or 3 weeks, we'll be back online again, wholly online. So we've really had to up our game when it comes to making sure we've got all the backup resources and support there from an IT point of view. So a good question there. Someone's just said, what are the items removed from older cases to get them to 14 pages? That's a really good question. I actually think that probably one of the real challenges is that originally there was a tendency towards producing really complex, large cases where all the data that you were required to use to address the issues in the case could be found from the data included in the case. Nowadays, because we have the internet superhighway at our fingertips, I find that often cases provide some of the data that's required to address the issues, to address the situation in the case. But often they also include signposting, so students can go out for themselves and explore and do their own detective work to try and capture further information to help address the issues raised in the case. Maybe that's one of the reasons why the case size has reduced so much. And of course, you know, we're in a Twitter world today. We're in a world today where there's so much kind of reduction of text and I think that process has really been reflected in the way in which cases are being adapted for management education. I probably also think that some of those really large complex cases from 25 years ago probably wouldn't be very appropriate for many of our undergraduate programs. And because there's just been a massive growth in undergraduate case usage, probably that's driven the average size of the case down somewhat. So so that might be something that's helpful to think about. Okay, another quote here, online cases. This is Shano and Anderson. Now, I have to say, these two folk are real pioneers of working with cases online. There's a lot of content on the Harvard website that you'll see from these guys, and they've had a lot to say. The Case Center's website have got webinar details about these guys as well, who've been looking at working with cases online for a long time now. They talk about how the whole online case teaching process has adapted so rapidly, largely because the software tools and learning environments have adapted so rapidly as well. How many of us had heard of Zoom 18 months ago? I certainly hadn't, and yet it's a daily part of my diet these days now. So, so there's so much adaptations that have taken place recently. Ivy Publishing, they've got some content on their website about adapting to online delivery. They've talked about the importance of bringing in live discussion via video, asking for written responses, comments on posts, really encouraging participation, talking up that important priority of active engagement as a key part of the approach to delivering online. And shifting across to Singapore for a moment, a typical team developing an online course might include specialist learning designers, editors, video producers, IT experts, project managers. Oh my goodness me, I wish I've got all that resource available in my departments. But you can start to see the complexities that can form around some of the more established online case delivery centers around the world who've really massively invested in online IT resource and platform technologies to be able to deliver a very consistent approach. Okay, moving across to India just for a moment, I think this is a really important point. When we're thinking about delivering online, don't be Harvard, don't be Scott from Worcester. Who's he for goodness sake? Be yourself and think about your own style. Think about your own learners. Because if we try and adopt an approach that we've simply seen online somewhere else, but actually it's not us, and it's not the approach that really represents the DNA, if you like, that our learners and our students are used to, then we're going to get lost in the process. So take a big step back, have a real think about what makes you, and think about the DNA of your own organization, and adopt that style with which you and your learners can be most comfortable. And don't worry if that's not the same style that's being shouted from the hilltops from Harvard or Ivy or from the Case Center or wherever. Develop your approach, and I think that's a really good piece of advice. Okay, so that's just what some scholars are saying from different parts of the world. What about our own expectations? How do we revise our own expectations for online delivery? I suspect that many of you had something like this going on in your head, if not on paper, just a few months ago, when we were all starting to necessitate that requirement to migrate to online delivery, if, like us, you were faced with those sorts of challenges in the workplace. So what are the priorities, and how do we manage expectations, if you like? A couple of quotes here, one from the US. Getting started learning online in an asynchronous format is not easy. Just preparing for those kind of aha moments that we see so popular in case methodology requires a real amount of thinking through and preparing for how the participants are going to react to that content. So, and I think that's really captured really well by this guy from the Open University. I used to work for the Open University in the UK, which of course has been pioneering online delivery and blended learning now for more than 40 years. And I think this is a really valuable comment. The biggest mistake you can make is just to do online what you do face-to-face without establishing the needs of the target students. To a certain degree, most scholars who are experienced practitioners of online delivery are saying the same thing. Let's not try and emulate what we're doing face-to-face, but let's look at online as a complete new, unique opportunity. And let's redesign our thinking and recalibrate our thinking around the opportunities that provides, rather than simply trying to copy our face-to-face approach online, because it's just not going to work. So when planning your delivery, planning the pedagogical approaches and the structures of your learning sessions, just restart the process and think, how is this going to work on an online platform? How is this going to work with polling? How is this going to work with a group chat? How can I make the best advantage of that? And don't worry about what you can't do. How can I use whiteboards if I've got whiteboards? How can I integrate whiteboards in digital whiteboards into small group breakout groups if the platform allows me to do that? Is there other resources? Are there other resources that I could be bringing in that I wouldn't normally bring into a face-to-face classroom? Here's some research from Columbia Business School. There's 3 slides actually from this lady, Angela Lee, who's actually shared quite a lot of content with the Case Center, and there's some webinars that she's put onto the Case Center website recently. The first of which is just about clarity. When getting as what I've called the hygiene factors right, to make sure that actually we've established the ground rules with our students. We're really, really clear about what they can expect from us, what we expect from them, how they're to engage. So when we got started earlier on, Jay reminded everybody it's just good practice. We're getting used to it now to put our microphones on mute. What I tend to say is that's fine, but put a little post-it note just at the top of your screen that says unmute, because how many times do people put their hands up to say something, then they get halfway through what they're saying before realizing they haven't unmuted themselves. And of course, those sort of challenges happen all the time, and we need to be able to cut each other some slack and to bear with each other as we adapt to this sort of changing technology and the changing environment. But let's be really clear about what the ground rules are, what that social etiquette is for using online resources that's kind of consistent. So for us as a university and as a business school, we didn't just allow all staff to develop their own kind of approaches to this, but we developed some standardized etiquette of good practice that was then shared at induction with our students, as it was agreed prior to induction with all of our staff, so that we're all singing from the same hymn sheet and we're consistent in our approaches. Really clear, precise instructions. Practice what it means to be a participant. As I'm talking to you right now, I'm looking at the screen that's in front of me. I'm looking just to the right. I've got another screen that's got my PowerPoint on. But hey, guess what? I've also got a laptop here next to me. I'm signed in to this webinar right now, and here it is on my laptop. And so I'm a participant as well. And that way I can actually see what you guys can see as the participant as well. And so I don't make a mistake of just assuming that you can see what I think you should be able to see. I'm double checking this, and I've got this kind of to the side of my main screen here. So when I'm waiting for something to upload, when I'm waiting to show a whiteboard, or when I'm waiting to share some slides, I can make sure that what you can see is consistent with what I think you should see. So think about the technology and how to work with all of that around yourself. Make sure that you're in a room where you've got appropriate lighting. Hopefully you can see me, but I've got lighting around here. I'm very mindful. I was in a seminar recently that was led by somebody at a Harvard seminar, and the guy had some really, really bright lights that were all circular bright lights, clearly behind the screen. And he, like me, wears glasses. And so they were kind of like shining off his glasses and shining back on everybody. So I've been rethinking how to use the lighting in here to make sure that it's clear enough for everyone to see. I'm also mindful of my backdrop as well. I'm making sure I'm wearing a shirt today that's kind of off-white because I've got a lot of whites behind me. And somebody from the Case Center a few weeks ago said, "Hey, Scott, you're just kind of blending into the background all the time." So I've had to kind of think about what I'm wearing and what my backdrop is. We have a really old house here that I live in, as you can probably tell from the door and the walls behind me. My house is more than 400 years old. And we've got some unfriendly, kind of friendly rats that are not too far away, probably about 10 meters away from the house over there. And so one of my family members lent me a rifle the other day, just in case I needed to sort of do something with those rats. And I had the rifle just there behind me on screen. And I suddenly realized that's probably not very helpful or appropriate for an online learning session. And you can probably see that just behind this plant, I've got a radiator. And not so long ago, I came in here and I didn't check the facilities, and I looked behind me and there was a load of laundry on drying on the radiator. And again, I was thinking probably not a good idea. So think about what's behind you. Think about how close you are to the screen. Am I getting a bit too close now? Am I too far away? And just kind of make sure that you're positioned right, that you've got the right backdrop, and that you're not providing any distractions as you're getting yourself set up. Think about kind of the checklist that you need your learners to be able to have as well, so that they can get the right hygiene factors. Keep asking for feedback. Yeah, I'll be asking Tricia and Jay at the end of the session, is there anything I could do differently? Is there any other observations you want to share? Because we're all learning from this all the time. So keep asking for feedback. Okay, I'm going to move us on quickly. Here's some quick revised expectations. Most scholars that I've spoken with and that I've heard talk about delivering cases online say immediately plan for no more than 70% of what you might normally expect to achieve face-to-face. So it's a starting point. You're not going to get through the content that you might normally expect to face-to-face. Just accept that, make the most of that, and adapt the programs accordingly. Obviously, that also means you kind of need to recheck your pace of delivery. There's things that we can do in webinar format, there's things that we can do face-to-face in the classroom, and there's things that we can do when we're encouraging discovery and reflection through the case method. That probably means we need to manage pace really, really carefully. I'm mindful that if I talk for too long, as I probably am doing right now, then my less experienced students are going to switch off. We've all heard about Zoom fatigue. You've only got me for less than an hour, so I'm just going to keep going for now and trusting that you're still there. And I can only see 2 of you actually in the room. The rest of you politely switched your videos off. So I don't know whether you're still there or whether you've gone to make some breakfast or you're doing the ironing right now or whatever. So you've got to think about the pace of delivery and how you keep applying different things throughout the session to make sure that you're getting people on board. Thank you very much, Maria, for assuring me that you're still there. I'm really grateful for that. That's really good. Thank you. Okay, think about breakout groups. And I would say as much as you can, make more use of breakout groups, because it's tiring for students to be in this whole group environment, as you're probably finding this tiring right now. So make the most of those breakout groups wherever you can, and allow, some people say never more than about 10 minutes, and then break them out into a breakout group with some work to do and to feedback. Make sure that you're hovering around those different breakout groups and inviting yourself in so that they know that you're monitoring what's going on there. And they can be really, really helpful opportunities, because if you listen to something that's going on in a breakout group and there's some really interesting dialogue going on, you can gently butt in and give that warm call and say, hey, what you're saying is really, really helpful. I'm going to be inviting you in a minute when we get back into the main group just to share a little bit more of those insights. So you can kind of use warm calls rather than just cold calls to bring people into the group discussion. And as I've said before, wherever, if they're working in if they're working in small groups using whiteboards or whatever, as they're capturing the content from that, encourage screen sharing when you get back into the main group afterwards. Okay, moving on. Back to Angela Lee from Columbia. She then goes to talk about engagement, drawing from students and examples, making sure as much as you can tell that you know about your students, get them to be talking about their stories and adapting their understanding from their own personal experiences to the challenges that the cases present. Cold call participants, lots and lots of people encourage cold calling. Again, do that in a manner that's gentle and supportive. Be mindful of your own learners. I know that if I cold call certain students in my group, there can be awkward silences for a long time. So it's important to know your group and to really manage that process of getting people engaged and involved and used to participating in different ways. Utilize lots and lots of polls, we've already said that. Angela uses this phrase, incorporating sparks, something different, just something entirely unrelated that can just re-engage everybody about every 10 or 15 minutes where they might have otherwise switched off. It could be a poll, it could be just getting them to stand up and do something, but whatever that thing is, just something that kind of re-engages people from what could otherwise be, you know, quite a long process of just listening, which is, I appreciate what you're doing right now. Vary the styles of questions asked. Some of the student barriers, this was some research from the Journal of Distance Education from a few years ago now. Some of the student barriers that were identified when working online with online cases and with other online resources. We've already talked about some of the administrative and IT issues. Some of these are real no-brainers, aren't they? Lack of social interaction, so what can we do to get people talking more? Inadequate academic or technical skills to be able to manage the system. You know, practice. Sometimes I find myself working with some new software and I'm working late in the evening just practicing it on myself or my poor wife who's in the other room with a laptop, and I'm running the session with her so we can kind of test this out first and see if it all works okay. there may be issues of poor learner motivation. And so we have to work out, well, what kind of approaches are going to work that are going to get people motivated? Are we going to encourage everybody to switch their videos on? Can we do that so they can see each other in the room? Sometimes that works. Sometimes if the platform's quite poorly supported, that can cause kind of erosion of quality on the screen. So there are challenges that you might want to think about there. Oh, Frank, I've got a kindred spirit here. Frank's been practicing his teaching by the sounds of things with his wife for 25 years too. I think we've got a lot of partners out there, haven't we? You've had to suffer some of our challenges when we've been trying to try out some of our technology with different types of people. Okay, we've got perhaps inadequate time or support for studies. That's one of the challenges when you know you've got a limited amount of time to get through all of the content within a particular module, particularly if you know that you can only manage 70% of what you'd normally be able to deliver in a face-to-face session. Some of the challenges of working online are cost. So I've had to renegotiate upwards in my department a few times now, where we've needed to up the resource base for some of our colleagues so that they can have adequate and appropriate access to the internet from home, where they might have been using a poor internet connection, and we've needed to pay for better connections for them. So access to the internet's been a real challenge. Oddly enough, I found that we were delivering programs in March really quickly, switching to online, and we were talking to students in Scandinavia and India and China really clearly. But I've got some students that live in the country about 30 miles away from here, and they couldn't get internet for anything. And it seemed rather ironic to me that we could go all around the world and our students were still logging in, but just 30 miles down the road were really struggling. So we've had to work out different types of challenges to meet those different types of needs. Okay. So some of the questions as part of that preparation, just things for you to take away and think about. You know, how do you agree the boundaries of your kind of etiquette, if you like, between yourselves, your department? What advice would you give just on dress code, both to you and to your students as you're working online? How do you manage late arrivals to the group? You know, do we cut each other some slack for the first week and then say, from now on, guys, we've got to be on time. I've got to be on time, so you've got to be on time. What extra factors are you going to use to maintain interest and foster curiosity during the case journey? What other things could you bring in? What breakout things can you do? Those little sparks that are going to be unique to your students, just to keep them engaged. How do you determine kind of how you organize the breakout groups? Do you do it randomly? Do you let the computer sort it out for you? Do you put them in teams that are known teams? I also kind of noticed that quite often when we're using some technologies and platforms, that I put students in breakout groups and then for some reason they're thrown out of a group. And when they're thrown out of a group, they go back into the main meeting room. So I've got to have one eye on what's happening in the breakout groups and one eye on what's happening in the main hall in case I need to bring someone back in again and relocate them back into their group. So we've got to keep our wits about us as we're monitoring all these different things. Trish and one or two others have asked about these sparks. It could be anything. I've seen people do workouts just to kind of get people moving and stretching and stepping out for a minute. I've seen somebody, there was a guy from Holt International Business School a few weeks ago. He's got his guitar on the wall and he pulls his guitar off and does a little guitar number every 15 or 20 minutes and gets the students to contribute to it. They're just crazy, wacky things, but they're hooks, if you like, that different people adopt just to try and get students to engage, re-engage, stay reconnected, and to guard against Zoom fatigue. National Geographic had an article not so long ago about Zoom fatigue and offered some suggestions about things that could be done to try and mitigate against that as well. So it's use your own skill sets, whatever it might be. And of course, quite often we kind of break out of the discussion if we need to and bring into something entirely different. If it's a brief TED talk or something, or another sort of brief video that we've captured from somewhere else, just to change the pace of things a little bit and to get people reconnected, or just to take the pressure off the individual for a moment before they come back into the group discussion. All sorts of different thoughts there about sparks, but play to your own strengths and be mindful of the limits of the technology that you've got around you. Final slide here from Lee about accountability. Be really, really clear, as we said before, about expectations. Make sure you're nudging those students who are less engaged. And it's a common observation that those students who are kind of the upfront students in the face-to-face sessions that are always contributing, they may not be the same ones that are upfront in the online sessions. In fact, they may be the people that are less confident in that sort of context and find themselves in the shadows. So as much as we're constantly, when we're delivering face-to-face, trying to watch out for those in the periphery, in the shadows, to bring them back in, we need to watch for those who are likewise hiding in the shadows, not sharing videos, not sharing content, not contributing, not voting, to make sure that we're doing everything we can to bring them in. And sometimes we need to nudge them offline and say, what's going on? You know, where are you? We really want to encourage you to get involved, to get engaged. So we need to keep a watchful eye on that. Record everything that you're doing wherever you can and wherever it's appropriate to do so, because by checking back on these recordings afterwards, both your students can capture the reflective learning from that, but also you can just check who was engaging, who wasn't engaging, just to see if you can spot any trends there. Okay, I'm going to move on quite quickly, mindful of time. I'm going to run through this really, really quickly now. As I said, I'm going to make these slides available to you at the end of the session too. Firstly, then, just managing some of these online platforms, just some questions to think about, making sure ultimately that you're using the platform to keep that group sticky, to keep them connected. And that's what a good, reliable platform needs to do. It needs to sustain that group's need. Needs to be something that's accessible for all learners. And I'm very mindful that we've had to do a technology check on all of our learners to make sure they're using the right tools. Some of my students are logging in just using this, and the mobile phone is just not good enough often when we're looking at an integrated case learning situation. So we make sure that we've got the technology check with our learners, that they're using the right platforms, that they're using the right they're using Google Chrome rather than Edge, where that works better, and things like that. We're using, where it's appropriate, we're bringing in other technology for polling and things like that. I've talked about that already. And we've looked wherever possible at how we can increase both the versatility and the functionality of the resources that we've already got. We've discovered that some of the tools that we've been using for years have more functionality than we've ever known before. And so we've started to really squeeze more juice out of some of those resources. And of course, we're constantly training our staff. So today, for 2 hours this afternoon UK time, one of my head of technology enhanced learning ran a 2-hour program updating all of my staff on some of the more recent technologies that are starting to be adapted for online learning, constantly updating staff on how to use the technology confidently and competently. Talked already briefly about the merits of both synchronous and asynchronous approaches. I'm going to scare you with a really big slide here. I'm not going to linger on this for very long, but what I've done is I've gone through several papers from different experts in synchronous and asynchronous case delivery, and I'm just taken the headlines from those and compared and contrasted the benefits of both. Many of these points we've already talked about, but clearly they're different in one sense when we're adapting for asynchronous delivery. I've got 2 colleagues at the moment who are delivering case studies in China asynchronously on a weekly basis, and they've had to really manage that process in a very complex kind of way to make sure that it's they're maintaining engagement, because it's really difficult to maintain engagement when it's asynchronous. So they've had to bring in all sorts of different approaches that they've adapted: discussion forums, cold calls, time released responses and things like that, to get people constantly engaged, sharing content and participating in the learning process. So I'm not going to go through all of these now, but I am going to make this slide available to you at the end so that you can take it away with you and have a look at it in more detail. Back to this couple again, Shiana and Anderson. Spending time lecturing synchronously in an online course is wasteful, they say. If you've got lecture material, you feel it's best delivered that way, record the lecture, post it online, let them watch it asynchronously, and then spend your synchronous time fostering interactive type approaches to learning. So, which is why we love to use the case study as an online resource. Let the lectures be accessed asynchronously as pre-recorded content so that you can use your face-to-face synchronous time more effectively. Final thing just here then, capitalizing perhaps on some of those extra benefits of remote and online delivery, as well as mitigating against the challenges. I've already said this is research that came out from MIT. Make sure that you're recording wherever you can. Make sure you're capturing, you're recording the content. It enables both you and the students to review what's happened afterwards. If you're going too fast for some of your students and some of the content's been missed, or they're struggling with the language barrier, they can go back and they can watch that asynchronously in their own time. They can stop, pause, capture the content and make sure they're learning at their own pace, which is great because you wouldn't normally do that face to face. So it's one of those benefits of having online sessions that students can reflect back, reflective practice, and they can go back through some of that content. It also allows those students who, for whatever reason, have been absent to catch up on what they've missed as well. So there's no excuse for them not catching up on the content and reconnecting with the group wherever you're at when you next meet. It allows students, of course, from different time zones to watch the session afterwards in their own time as well. And I'm mindful that that's got all sorts of implications too. Someone's just said, Marisa said, mixed feelings about recording. Students are more self-conscious. I would agree. I think first time round, when you click that record button, everybody's self-conscious. I'm self-conscious, but actually, I think the more you practice that, it becomes just part of habit after a while, and students soon forget. It goes into the background and they forget the fact that they've been recorded on that. The other thing that I reassure students is that in the systems that we use, the recording is only in the main group discussion. So when they go out into breakout groups, that's not captured in the recordings. So students can be safeguarded that that's a kind of a safe place where they can be a bit more honest, a bit more vocal, can get content and thinking out there. So, so students know that even if they're feeling a little bit subconscious in the main group, when they get into the subgroups, the breakout groups, they've got their own private space where they can carry on those conversations. And of course, as tutors, we have metrics that we have to manage and capture all the time. So sometimes it's difficult to be able to maintain registers, and we don't want to be wasting time in valuable face-to-face or online sessions trying to do registers. So we can take attendance afterwards and review the group chat afterwards as well. Hopefully you can see some of the clear benefits of recording based on those sort of insights. Benefits for asynchronous delivery. Of course, you've got that capacity to integrate more video, simulation, online exercises that people can do in their own time and then feed back into the synchronous time together. And we've already said it overcomes some of the challenges of operating in different time zones. So it potentially allows you to broaden your potential geographic reach in your session. And it enables participants to work at their own pace. Because one of the challenges, of course, of working synchronously or in one class is that you've got to work at the pace that the trainer, the tutor, the scholar is delivering the session at. So it allows students to work through some of the challenges at their own pace according to their own learning style. And of course, it encourages reflective practice. And as case scholars, we often say that we're great believers in supporting both discovery and reflective practice. In fact, some educational scholars say that as much as 40% of what we retain, what we kind of root in there as learning, we capture through reflective practice, active reflective practice. And that can be achieved quite well through asynchronous delivery as well. That's research that's come out of IE Business School. I promise you some links. So here are the links, the Case Centers webinars, the Harvard webinars and the Ivy webinars. And as I said, all these slides I'm going to post in just a couple of moments now into the group chat so you can download that file. Here are my references that I've been using throughout the session for what they're worth, if you want to go back to those. And that's me. I think I've just allowed maybe 4 or 5 minutes for a bit of catch-up time at the end. There may be 1 or 2 questions that I might have missed, so I'll ask Tricia and Jay if they want to come into the room as well and see if there are any other questions I've missed, or if you've got a question you'd like to raise as well. Please do feel free to either shout it out now or put it into the group chat, and let's see if we can make sure that we've addressed any issues or questions that you might have before we go. So Trisha J, were there any questions that I missed at all from the group chat?
No.
Drew? Probably got most things there.
Yeah, not that I can see.
Okay.
Oh, there's one from Maria. Running out. Any major difference on online case teaching for grads and undergrads?
Ooh, okay, well, that's a good question. Oddly enough, my experience again, and this might make sense really, it tends to be the younger my students, the more confident they are about working with whatever is the latest platform technology that we're working with. In fact, sometimes it's the students that come to me and say, hey, have you seen this bit of software? We could use this in our class session. So whereas perhaps some of our more mature learners, and certainly I do a lot of work in exec education. I manage the exec ed program at the business school at Worcester. A lot of those are saying that we're just struggling to keep up with this. These are new challenges for us. So I tend to find that I have to bear with my older exec learners a little bit and cut them some slack a little bit more. And often we work at a slightly steadier pace. Whereas for our undergraduates, a lot more diversity in terms of the way in which I integrate the content into the discussion. The pace tends to be interchangeable much more. Although we don't necessarily go as deep into many of the issues, just by virtue of their own competences and experiences, nonetheless, we can engage and provide hooks for learning using a lot more technology and different sources of technology than probably I would do with some of my postgraduates. I don't know whether that's experiences that you have. I can see Maria's nodding her head at the moment, so I've got a kindred spirit there, I think, as well. Okay. Just as we're looking for any other questions, I'm just going to search my documents just to make sure I can share with you, hopefully, some content. I'm just going to see if I can find it now.
What you can do also is if you email me those docs, I'll send it to everybody.
Oh, that's fantastic.
In our group, and we'll register as well.
That. Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions? We got like
I'd like to ask a question.
Go ahead.
Hi. I teach an online Master of Entrepreneurship degree, and our students' average age is 37, and they bring into the program either an idea that they've been working on to start a new venture, or they have a venture that they want to improve. And my question is, can I go to the case library, excuse me.
Okay. It's okay.
And well, let me step back. We have our students talk to subject matter experts that are operating in the same area of business that they are trying to start their business in. And I would love to be able to have them go look at cases that are also in the same area, the same type of business. Is the ability to look, can I look that up when
Absolutely.
I go to the,
I might bring Trisha in on this as well. She might be able to advise more clearly, but I can, from my own experience, I can say the Case Center has a really well-oiled search process which you and all your students could log into, and from which they can then search for comparable stories, if you like, comparable cases to the scenarios and situations, just by punching in different keywords, different locations, different subject themes, and the Case Center's web facilities are shaped across 4 different spaces, as it were, one of which is dedicated for educators, one of which is dedicated for students. And so you can get an educator account for free and go and explore the sorts of cases that are appropriate for your own use, but students can go and set up a student account as well, so they can go and explore cases for themselves from the collection. Trisha, do you want to come in there? Have I captured that right?
Yep, pretty much. And so the faculty can view the inspection copies for classroom use and teaching notes. And then we have the filter, like if you just put in strategy, you can filter it locations, industry, topics, dates, number of pages. It's all in there. You can choose out of the database and filter it.
Yeah, what I'll be looking for is is cases dealing with a specific industry or.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
Now, we,
Yeah.
we have our subject matter interviews. We've got 800 or some out of these interviews. And so we have our students, before they do their interview, they look up and see what else is already, it really works really well. And I can see how bringing case studies in a similar manner could really enhance what we're doing. So I really appreciate the seminar. I've learned a lot.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody. I don't want to take any more time. I know people have to run to go teach or meetings or their next Zoom meeting. So thank you, Dr. Scott Andrews. Thank you, K-Center, for providing this information. Look out for more information come about this. So Dr. Scott Andrews will email me the information. I will send that out to you. Me and Brittany will do so. And I will see you all in our next meeting, Wednesday, November 4th, and more information to come on that as well. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
you, everybody.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.